So good morning, everyone, and maybe good afternoon to those being on the Eastern Hemisphere. Good morning from the Safetica offices in sunny Brno, and we are quite happy that you're attending this broadcasting, which will present the new version of Safetica, Safetica 9.3. And our goal is to protect data anywhere. So now speaking, it's me, Ota, and your guide or host will be Jan Lakatosh, our product manager, who will show you how the new version will work. So what's the most important part, or what we are bringing with the new version, is that we have way stronger integration with the Fortinet products, mainly with the FortiGate. Then we are also bringing first version for macOS, and also we're expanding our security features into Android platform with the first file auditor or file auditing features. So what you're gonna see today on today's webinar, which will last approximately 1 hour, not more, you will see how we work together with Fortinet. Also, you're gonna have a sneak peek into Mac OS platform and how Safetica works with Mac OS. Also, we will, as I mentioned, focus on the mobile platform, and then you will learn about other improvements and some roadmap highlights that we have. And then there's a Q&A session as usually. Also, you can raise your question or write them down to the question box, and it will be answered at the end of the webinar. And then after the webinar ends, you will receive the recording of this webinar straight away. So now it's up to Jan to show you what's new, how it works, and when you can receive the new version. So it's up to you, Jan.
Okay, thanks for the nice introduction, Oda. Hello, everyone. This is Jan speaking. I'm a product manager here from Safetica. I wasn't involved in all the improvements that you will see today, but I'm fully qualified to show them and introduce how they are working. And hopefully you will get a nice taste of the new version. And then probably next week, you will be also sent links to download the new version, test it out. There's a few final last things that we want to check out and fully finalize before we give the version to you so that it's fully tested and fully working. But next week, you should be receiving the version for testing on your end as well. So let's get into the topics. Safetica 9.3 with the topic of data anywhere. Before we dive into the specific features of the new version, I would like to give you a little background context for why this version is called Data Anywhere and what it actually means in the context of our past versions and the versions which will be released in the future. So let's start with a bit of history, and I'll just remind you of what Safetica 8 had. Safetica 8 and the versions previous to that, they were focused on data audit and data protection, and you might know that this was mostly focused on the endpoint itself. So we were able to audit what's happening on the end stations where the users are working. We were able to protect the data there. We could block using flash drives, sending emails, etc. from the endpoint. But that's a way of working which is not so much common today, because you have many more places where you are working, be it at home, be it in the cloud, and these environments also need protection. So when we released Safetica 9, there were a lot of improvements and revisions of the existing interface and how our DLP policies are built. However, a small change within that version, but a big change in the large scale of things, was that we started protecting data which were leaving for various cloud services. So you could start building data policies to protect data from getting into synchronized cloud drives or being uploaded into cloud services through the web browsers. Then in version 9.1, which is the now public version, we introduced email auditing feature for Office 365, which actually enables us to protect email or information sent through email directly from the cloud side. So even if you use a mobile phone, even if you connect to your Outlook web application from home or from a non-company device, we are able to see the communication. And obviously protection will follow, but for now we only had audit. So you can see that we slowly started moving away from endpoints to other places where data reside and where users are working. And now the new version, Safetica 9.3, actually expands this place to new environments. So what the FortiGate integration, which you will see shortly, does is that it expands data audit and protection also to network. So even if you want to create some DLP policies, which will act on the network, not only on the endpoints, you can do that using Fortinet products, which can be seamlessly integrated with Safetica. We are also expanding our auditing capabilities to the macOS platform. This is something that you've been asking for a very long time. We had to do a lot of research, architectural work, testing, then again architectural work, and finally now in version 9.3, we are finally releasing a client for the macOS platform, which enables auditing. And in a few short moments, you will also see what kind of capabilities are included. And I assure you that we will work on this client also in the future. And finally, we are also extending our data auditing features to mobile platform. In this version, it's only Android for now. However, we are also introducing ways of monitoring what kind of data are created or downloading onto Android mobile phones so that you can see what kind of information the users are working with even on mobile devices. And obviously, I don't have anything for Safetica 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, but this data anywhere topic will definitely be expanded in the future. So as probably your customers or your companies are extending the workplace to other environments than just the workstations, also Safetica is extending the protection to other environments so that we can protect your data wherever they reside. So we will start with data audit and protection on the network, which means some introduction about Fortinet and how we integrate with it. But before I introduce the new capabilities, I would like to ask you a short question. And let me just launch the poll within the GoToWebinar meeting. So now I believe you should see the poll, and I would like to ask you, which of the Fortinet products listed are you using or are you working with most frequently? And in case you don't really come to contact with Fortinet products, the final option is for you. And in case you use a different Fortinet product, there is no place within the poll to give a custom answer, but feel free to send us feedback what kind of Fortinet products are most common with you. And I assure you that we will do research on that because Fortinet integration is a big topic right now. So I see the votes coming in. More than half of the people have already cast their votes. So let's just wait a few more moments so that more people can finalize the voting. So I see 70% have already voted. So final 5 seconds to cast your vote. And I'm closing the poll. And I, of course, will also share the results with you. So, all right. You should see the poll results right now. So you can see that a third of the attendees today are often working with FortiGate, and 2/3 of you don't use Fortinet products that much. Still, I will go through how the integration works, and maybe it will give you a taste of what kind of capabilities you could achieve with combining Safetica with FortiGate or other Fortinet products. But I also like to see what kind of ratio is among the people using Safetica that use and don't use FortiGate. So thank you for the votes. This is very nice information for us on the product management department. And let's get back to the presentation. And I here that my screen is not showing well. So hopefully you see my presentation now. So let's dive into Fortinet. So what the new version is bringing is actually integration with FortiGate based on API level. That means that Safetica through Fortinet APIs is able to connect with FortiGate appliances, and it can do automated configuration of these appliances. And the two things that are already available in the version is that Safetica can classify data. We are very strong and confident in our data classification. And once you classify data using Safetica, we can store the classification within the data itself. In the new version, there is a new way of storing data using metadata attributes, which actually ensure that the classification remains with the files even when they leave the stations. And these kind of files then can be recognized by FortiGate appliances. And since Safetica pre-configures the appliance to recognize this and respond to it, you are able to either get an audit of these classified data flying through the network, or you can even go ahead and start protecting them. So you can block certain data classified by Safetica and extend the protection either by a second layer on the network or by ensuring that even devices without Safetica clients are protected. And the second benefit, it's a smaller one, but I believe it will save administrators a lot of time, is that we are able to synchronize SSL inspection, which is already done on the FortiGate appliance on the network level with Safetica, so that all the websites which are inspected will be also inspected using Safetica on the endpoint. And the same way, the websites which are whitelisted for inspection will be whitelisted also on the endpoints. So this should save the administrator time. So rather than managing two different inspection solutions, you just set it up once, and Safetica will take care of synchronizing the setting between the network and the endpoints. But the main point here is the pre-configured FortiGate policies for protecting Safetica classified data on the network. And just to give you a better understanding of how this works, I've prepared a little scheme which should introduce how this works. So imagine you have a file which comes to existence in some way. It can be either downloaded, created on the end station, it can be exported by an application. And when something like that happens, Safetica then analyzes the file, and based on how it was created or some attributes of the file, it assigns the file a classification. It may say that the file is financial, let's say, or it's an internal file which shouldn't be shared outside of the company. So a file with such configuration then leaves the endpoint, and since you have a network appliance, in this case a FortiGate, the file goes through the network into the appliance, where again it's analyzed, and based on the analysis, when the classification is not found, the file can be then allowed and it goes out to the internet or through the email. Or on the other hand, when the file is classified, and let's say it's a financial file which shouldn't go out of the company network, then the appliance can take action, or it can just log the action and basically block the file from leaving the company network to the internet. I see a raised hand in the GoToWebinar, so hopefully everything is working. Let me just check if there is any problem here. Okay, I don't see any problems, so sorry about the interruption. And what Safetica does is that Fortinet has to recognize data classified by Safetica, and it needs to understand what kind of classification already exists. This, of course, is configured here on the Safetica configuration, and using the new integration, you are able to automatically synchronize the settings on the appliance with the settings on the Safetica protection, so that you only manage it here in one place and everything else is optimized, so that you don't have to spend extra time and extra resources to create the configuration in two different places. So this is the theory, just to give you a big overview of how the flow is working. And now, if everything will work fine, I would like to connect to my virtual machine. Hopefully you can see it fine. Let me just check the audience view. Yeah, should be working. So now what you see is our Safetica console, and currently I'm in the DLP section. So I will show you how you can easily configure the connection to FortiGate and how it will work in practice. So to configure FortiGate, you have to go into maintenance and integration settings, where we have a new section called FortiGate integration. So to connect to FortiGate, you will need two simple things: the address of the FortiGate, and then an API key, which will allow Safetica to connect to the FortiGate and configure it. So here I have an appliance prepared. Let me just relog into it. And I've already prepared a security profile which allows me to connect through the API to the appliance so that I save time. So I have a webinar administrator profile created already. And I will just regenerate the API key which Safetica will use to connect to the appliance. So I have a new API key which I simply paste here. And of course I need the FortiGate address. So I will just simply copy the address of this appliance like that. And when I click OK, the connection is verified. And when I save the settings, it's in place. So now I'm already connected Safetica to the FortiGate appliance. And I will show you how the two new features actually work. So on my FortiGate, I have some policies set up. They are using some inspection of the network. The inspection uses some kind of certificates. There are many of them included here. So if I open a profile like that, you can see a certificate authority certificate here. So if I want to synchronize how the inspection will work on the appliance and on Safetica clients, simply I go into this network certificate section, and I can import it either manually. I can do that for other kinds of network appliances, not just FortiGate. Or I can use this simple option, import all SSL certificates and distribute them using Safetica. And if I confirm this and save the setting and refresh the view, you can see that Safetica, using the API, downloaded the certificates used in policies. And with this, I've actually given out an order to all the Safetica endpoints to install the certificate. And now the inspection will work the same way as it works on the network layer. So this is just a nice benefit for the administrator to save time. But the bigger and more important feature is the other one: create FortiGate policies for detecting Safetica data categories. So I'll just turn this on for now. So I've turned it on, and I'll go to the data leak prevention section here. So you can see that the section is empty at the moment. I have nothing synchronized yet, so there is no DLP sensor in FortiGate. And also in policies, I only have my existing policies which were there before I even started configuring Safetica. Now, if I create a new data category, let's call it a webinar category. And I, of course, need to use the new metadata kind of data category so that the classification is stored within the files. So I created the category. Of course, I can go into the category and configure it, create some rules how the data will be actually classified. But for simplification, I've only created the category. And I'll return to the integration setting view so that I just enforce a synchronization. Now, if I switch back to FortiGate, you see that the webinar category is already placed here. I can show you that it's pre-configured by Safetica. You can see that the action for this category is log only. I can change it within the Safetica graphical user interface. So I can choose either blocking the files or just logging them. I'll leave it to logging at the moment. And also, Safetica created some inactive policies which are pre-configured to use the sensor. So I can now decide if I want to include the sensor in my existing policy, which was already in place, or I can just simply activate a Safetica policy which I will then organize somehow within my policy order or policy priority. And based on the configuration, the FortiGate will actually take action and either log data classified by Safetica or block them, or evaluate the order based on the configuration. Obviously, you saw just an example of one data category being synchronized like this. If I create several of them, it will create several data leak prevention sensors here and several policies, either as IPv4 or IPv6. We create both of them in case you are using both. And you can then decide which of them you activate, how you configure them, etc. So really, if I change the configuration in Safetica and I create the classification, I add a new data category here, or I remove a data category from here, it will be synchronized automatically with the FortiGate appliance, and I don't really have to manage it at all. So I do the data classification protection configuration from Safetica, and all my network configuration can be done by FortiGate, but I don't really have to take more time to configure the FortiGate to protect data because Safetica does it automatically for me. So this is how it works in practice. In case you have additional questions, I encourage you to include them in the question box and go to webinar. But now I'd like to go back to the presentation so that we take a look at the other features as well. So let's get back here. And just to recap what kind of use cases this integration is worth for. So basically what Safetica does is that it has detection of sensitive data and advanced classification of them. So that's where we are strong, where we can recognize what kind of information the users are working with, and we can assign it classification. This is something Safetica has been doing for many years. So we have a lot of experience in this field. We can take care of this. We can also, and that's the second point, manage these sensitive data when they are still on the endpoints. So you can enforce policies for users to limit how they are working with such data, where these data can go, but it's limited to the endpoints only. But then if you have a FortiGate or FortiMail on the network, you can recognize Safetica classified data there too, and create a second layer of protection or create some special behavior such as sending classified files into a quarantine. You can either just log them so that you have a network view of everything that went through Safetica but wasn't caught there, and then it was caught on the network, etc. And of course, you can also use the already existing integration with FortiSIEM to track and manage how Safetica protects your data, where incidents are happening. And of course, FortiSIEM can be integrated with other security solutions too, so that you have everything consolidated into one space where you have an overview over everything, all the tools that you are using in the company. So this is for the integration with Fortinet. Hopefully it was interesting to the third of you which are already using FortiGate, and also a little interesting to the rest of you which aren't yet using Fortinet products. And now I would like to move on to the next topic, which is macOS. So as mentioned previously in the introduction, Safetica 9.3 comes with a macOS client. It can be either installed from the installer, as you can see on the screenshot, or you can get the macOS agent extracted using the desktop console. And it works in a very similar fashion as our Windows client. You install the agent installs the client, and the client takes care of the protection. What we are bringing in this first version of the macOS client is auditing capabilities for what kind of applications are running on the device, what kind of websites the user is visiting on the device, what kind of devices were connected to the macOS device, such as flash drives, etc. And we also audit file operations. That means what kind of things are the users doing on the computers, and what kind of operations happened. To give you a sneak peek of how this works, I don't really have a client with Mac running, because the client basically runs in the background and you cannot see anything worth showing. However, my colleague kindly connected to my virtual environment, and you can see I have a computer with a little Apple logo here. So let's just see what kind of logs you have thanks to our new client. So you can see that the user during the time connected to this virtual have used Safari, which is a browser. They used Activity Monitor to probably just check on the client running in the background, some Microsoft applications. The Finder app was also launched, and I have an overview of what kind of applications were run, when they were run, in a very similar fashion as we have on Windows platform. I also have an audit or monitoring of devices. So you can see that there was a flash drive connected, disconnected, and again connected to the device. This is already integrated with the devices which are detected by Safetica on Windows. So if you take a same flash drive on a Windows computer, Safetica recognizes it, and then you plug the same flash drive into a Mac computer, we identify it as the very same flash drive, and you can see the consolidated configuration and logs here, or in the device control logs, or configuring Safetica zones for protection. So this is already integrated with our existing infrastructure. I can also see a list of websites which the user visited during the audit. You can see some news websites. This is actually a Czech news website. And then TFS is the development platform that we are using to develop Safetica. So the user was also working with that. And finally, the files section. I can see that during connecting to the virtual, the user was working with Microsoft Word and with the Finder app, and they were doing some file operations, which meant creating files and transforming them somehow. So I can even see where the file was stored, where it went, if it was moved, etc. So this is already included in Safetica 9.3. Obviously, this is the first public version that we are already releasing. Based on the initial feedback, this is already satisfactory for many of our clients, which were looking for exactly this kind of information. But in the future, we will definitely be adding more functionality. And the end goal, obviously, is to bring the macOS client to the same level of feature set as we provide on Windows platform. So hopefully this is good news to you and you are liking the macOS capabilities. If you have questions, again, you can use the questions box. But now let's move on to the next topic, which is auditing on mobile. So as mentioned previously, on mobile, especially on the Android platform this time, we are bringing audit of new files. What this means is that when you download a file to your mobile phone or you create it right on the mobile phone, Safetica Mobile, which is running on the Android, it will be able to recognize this and send information about these actions to the Safetica management service. That means that you will see these kind of logs. This is actually a screenshot from our web console. You will see it directly in the files log section. All these logs are tied to the user. So in the same way as you see file operations done on desktop computers, in Safetica, you will see the very same user doing these file operations on their mobile device. So this is something that you can turn on optionally in the configuration, and it's the first version of what we would like to do, which is like full audit of data actions done on the mobile. So for now, we only detect these new files which originated on the device, but in the future, we will also expand this functionality to see user operations such as copying files, moving them around, maybe sending them out of the device, etc. So this is first version, but it already gives you an overview of what kind of actions the users are doing on the mobile devices. And with this, we close the data anywhere topic of the new version. But obviously, since version 9.1, we had a lot of time. Version 9.2 remained internal. It wasn't finalized enough so that we give it to the customers. But we did a lot of many other improvements, and I would like to just highlight some of them so that you get a better overview of all kinds of improvements that you will get with the update. So the first one is related to our sensitive data detection. You may know that in version 9.1, we introduced a new rule detection system where you can specify rules with conditions of and or or relationships, where you can combine what kind of data you would like to identify and detect in files. And now we are extending that with custom dictionaries. This is actually a response to the user feedback. So if you send us feedback to include this custom dictionary import, here it is. You can import dictionaries with custom keywords, and in the very same fashion as you configure sensitive content detection today, you can include these dictionaries within your rules and expand the configurability of how the data detection happens. So hopefully this will make many of you happy. Another feature that we have right now in the new version is something we call incident file download. How this works is that here you see a screenshot from the DLP logs section, which includes DLP incidents. So you can see that the user copied a file which was stored locally into a cloud drive. And the action here was to log this action. So the action wasn't logged and the file was copied. And in case the administrator sees an incident like this, simply by right-clicking it and choosing the download file option, they are able to pull this very same document from the workstation to their station so that they can investigate what kind of document it was, whether it was really of sensitive nature, whether it was a false positive document, and this actually enables you to either fine-tune false positive matches or to inspect the documents which the users were logged to actually leak from the company. As I'm speaking about it, maybe a lot of you are thinking about shadow copy and file shadowing functionality. This isn't actually on par with what you would expect from shadow copying, so we aren't automatically creating copies of documents just yet. So full shadow copy capability is coming in the future. This is a very first version which can already help the administrators to investigate certain incidents. So we are already releasing it to your hands. If you will have any feedback on the feature, if you will have any feedback on how the shadow copy functionality should work in the future, please let us know, because it's in the works. We are designing it, we are preparing all the backend infrastructure for it, and definitely in the next few versions you will see this feature expanded and become a full shadow copy capability. Another little revision that we managed to squeeze into the version was a revision of alerts. Alerts have been quite problematic in the past because we were expanding the DLP capabilities very fast. However, the alerts remained unrevised. And even from you, we received a lot of feedback saying that the alerts could work in a different fashion, or they could support more data channels which they were supporting. So what we did is that we revised all the DLP alerts that were available. And now we are introducing a brand new system for DLP alerting, which enables you to alert any DLP policy violation, regardless of what kind of data channel it involved. So it works universally for all the data channels that are supported in the product. You can even use data alerts which show you cumulative policy violations. So maybe it's not interesting to know about all the individual incidents that the user did, but if a user attempts to leak data maybe 20 times, it's a different use case than when they accidentally sent a file to a colleague which they shouldn't have. So for this, you can use the second alert called cumulative DLP policy violation. And then even for cases where you don't have DLP policy set up, you can use the other two alerts, which allow you to discover to what kind of storages data are leaking in bigger numbers. And even using these alerts, you can fine-tune your configuration and maybe introduce new DLP policies into the organization. So hopefully this revision will address many of your concerns and notes on the past alert functionality. And again, if you will have any feedback on this function, we will be happy to hear that. because this is version 1, and obviously we would like to expand this in the future. And finally, just a list of other minor improvements that are included in the version. So we are improving our support of docking stations. Sometimes in the past, we came across hardware issues with various docking stations from lesser known manufacturers or from docking stations which were internally built in a non-standard fashion. Now with the new version, we have a new system for detecting docking stations, which ensures that devices connected to these docking stations will be protected, but the docking stations otherwise will work without any interruption. We also enhanced our integration with SIEM, and for certain SIEMs, this may mean that they will need less configuration and parser fine-tuning, because the default format of Safetica logs sent to the SIEM will be more standard, and therefore the SIEM will be able to recognize it easily. Also in the summer, the new standard for TLS encryption of version 1.3 was finally approved. So we are already in version 9.3 supporting websites which use this new standard. And also internally, our whole product is using TLS 1.3 so that we have a strong encryption of our own communication, so that we really bring you the best of security. And finally, we did many backend improvements, which should ensure that our clients run more efficiently on the workstations. We also did some database optimizations, which may make running Safetica a lot faster in bigger environments. So if you have customers of several thousand users, you will probably notice a performance boost of our server. And also we optimized how we are validating website certificates so that we ensure faster website loading, which can be up to 2.5 times faster than previously. So hopefully this will be noticeable and you will see Safetica running even faster than previously. And I believe this closes all the improvements that we are introducing in the new version. And before we move on to the roadmap highlight topic, I have one more poll for you. And I would be very interested to know which of the new features actually caught your attention the most. Which of them did you like the most and will probably benefit from the most? So whether it's the integration with FortiGate or the macOS client, the auditing on Android platform, or the custom dictionary import, which was also a response to your feedback, or finally the incident file download, which is the initial implementation of shadow copy functionality. So I see the votes coming in already, and I'll give you a few more moments to finalize the voting. So I see more than 50% of the attendees have already voted, and some more votes are coming in. So let's give 10 final seconds for the voters. Okay, I'm closing the poll right now. And I'm sharing the results. Hopefully you can see them. So you can see that the incident file download is quite popular. So I'm happy to see that. As I mentioned, this is not the final implementation. It will now be limited. You will learn more about how you can use it and what kind of limitation it has using our e-learning, which we prepared for the new version. But in the future, we will definitely address all the pain points and the limitations and expand this to the expectations that you would have from this functionality. It's also nice to see that a third of you actually are interested in macOS. So I'm also happy that we are finally bringing it to you, because the wait has been quite long. And I'm also happy to see that FortiGate integration makes sense to a fourth of you. So thanks for the feedback. And I'll be happy to share this with our development teams, because they will see that the work that they put into the product was worth it. So thank you again for the votes. Let me just hide the poll. and move back to the presentation. Roadmap highlights. Let me just switch the slide so that you can read it. There are no timelines here. This is not a roadmap which would be guaranteed tied to a specific version. However, the topics listed are listed according to the time which you should probably see them. So the higher the topic, the sooner you will see it in the product. We are working very hard right now on bringing DLP policies for Office 365. This is a topic that we invested a lot of time into in the past 6 months. And in the next public version, wherever it comes, unfortunately, I really don't have a timeline of when the next version will be coming out. I expect sometimes at the beginning of next year. You will see the first implementation, which will introduce DLP policies for email. So as we had in version 9.1 auditing for email in Office 365, you will be able to also protect email using Safetica in Office 365. And based on that, we will then extend the protection to other areas, such as protecting SharePoint, protecting perhaps Teams, or any other parts of the Office 365 environment. We are also toying with the idea of end user classification, which would enable users to actually assign classification to the data themselves. You can imagine this as me as the user working with the document and deciding this document is financial, and I will just put the classification into this. Based on your feedback, this is something that many users are already using or would benefit from. So we would like to introduce this also in the product. We have a prototype here internally, and when we get it into a satisfactory state, we will definitely introduce it into the product. If you would have any feedback to end user classification, I'm happy to hear about it, because next week we'll be having a big workshop where we design how this actually makes it into the product, in what form and shape. Obviously, shadow copy, I mentioned, we will be evolving the current implementation into a full capability. And then a very long-term process, which is running in the background, is unifying all the DLP approaches that we have in the product. You may know that in the past, Safetica was a very strongly contextual DLP. Then we introduced some content detection, where we can detect sensitive files using detecting the content of the files. Now we are planning to introduce classification by users. And obviously, this needs to be implemented in a way where you can combine these configurations and create some conditions using these various attributes to build your protection. So we are preparing the backend for this, and definitely you will see these approaches merging into a very unified DLP. But it's a long-term process, and in specific versions, we can only do small steps towards this, but we are working on it. We are also planning to improve our audit with anomaly detection. So we will be able to assign either some risk level to various user actions, or we will be able to detect unusual behavior from users. So you can expect a little bit of machine learning included here. We have technical prototypes of this. This is, again, a new thing that we are developing, so it will take a little bit of time until it makes it into the product. But you can expect that our audit will be much smarter and probably even more accurate thanks to this anomaly detection in the future. And also a very long-term topic that we have already started working on is cloud hosting support. So we definitely want to still support on-prem, but more and more customers and partners are asking about running Safetica in cloud and cloud deployment. So we have already started migrating and preparing the backend so that it supports native cloud instances. And in the future, you will see this as one of the main alternatives of how to run Safetica. So you'll be able to choose whether to have a cloud Safetica or to run it on-prem in your own environment, on your own server. So these are some highlights. Again, These aren't very specific and aren't tied to specific versions, but in case you have any questions about them, you can either use the question box, which we are getting into, or you can send us feedback and we'll try to address your questions individually. So this brings us actually to the questions part. So let me just open the questions box on my machine. And I see quite a few questions here. So I'll start with those asked first. Okay, first question. Please send us the recorded video later. Yes, as mentioned at the beginning, the recording will be sent to you. I think it will be sent automatically by GoToWebinar, and you will also receive an email from our marketing department with all the information about the version and the recording of the video as well. Then I'm going through the questions. There is a question. Can we install Safetica on a cloud virtual machine and monitor 24 hours on the endpoint located on different location? Would there be any issue in terms of transmitting data and rules back and forth from the endpoint to Safetica console in own cloud virtual machine? Cloud deployment is possible. My virtual machine, which you saw, was actually running in cloud, so this is not a problem. You need to take care of the configuration so that you open ports from the cloud virtual machine to the endpoints and ensure that the endpoints can connect to it. You also need to take considerations about the security of such setup, but yes, this is fully possible right now. Is licensing affected when using Safetica and Fortinet integration? Thank you. Licensing as regards users or computers is not affected. Fortinet integration is actually included as a separate license, which should be available for existing customers right now. But in the future, as we are expanding the integration, it might be broken down into various licenses, but this is a question which at the moment doesn't have a specific answer, and it will be evolving based on how we evolve the actual integration. However, the Fortinet integration is not in any way needed for any of Safetica functionalities. So if you are using Safetica without Fortinet, you still are getting the full experience. Only if you are actually using Fortinet products, you can integrate them with Safetica to save time managing these solutions. Okay, so there are more questions about the recorded session. So as regards the FortiGate integration, where can we see blocked actions done by FortiGate? The blocked actions can currently be seen in FortiGate. There is a FortiGate log section where you can see it. In the newer versions of FortiGate, you have to use the command line interface, unfortunately, because Fortinet decided to hide this from the graphical user interface. However, this is one of the first feedbacks that we got on the integration, and in the next versions, we want to include the logs from FortiGate in Safetica. So this is coming. It's not yet there in 9.3, but the next versions will introduce also logs from FortiGate. Another question about the release date. When is the release date of 9.3? The release date is next week. We wanted to give the version to you already today. However, we found a few tiny bugs which we needed to fix, and we didn't want to release today and then create another update next week. So next week, once the release is verified and fully finalized, you will receive links and you can try the version. Another question from Mark, macOS, Android. This should be a short hop to Linux clients also. Is that going to be a future feature? What about mobile Apple iOS? So Android you saw is mobile. iOS doesn't yet have the data auditing feature, but we want to definitely include it. The Android and iOS mobile apps should in the long run be on par as regards features. Linux clients is a topic which we are evaluating in product management. We are gathering feedback on that. At the moment, there are no specific plans to have a Linux client, but based on the feedback, and the feedback differs region from region, we will be evaluating it in the future. So at the moment, it's not scheduled anywhere. We are working on the 4 platforms, Android, iOS, macOS, and Windows. And in case the priority changes in the future, we might come back to Linux too. Okay, another question about mobile. Is Safetica for mobile function support for email client application in Android? So I'm not sure if I'm getting the question. However, the audit that you saw only relates to data. So if you use email, we don't see it yet, how you are using it on the mobile itself. You can track this using the email integration with Office 365, where we can see the email sent from mobile devices, but directly from the mobile phone, we don't see email communication. However, if you save an attachment from an email, we will be able to audit this using the new functionality. So if you save a file, we will see that. If you receive an email, we only see it if it's in Office 365 and you have that all configured. That's the current state. In the future, we will probably want to audit mobile, but at the moment, we don't have that yet. Okay, so there is a question about Mac. Does Mac Android client also work as DLP functionality, or only auditing is possible? At the moment, only auditing. Probably on Android, we will expand the auditing. On Mac, we are working on protection capabilities, but there is nothing in version 9.3 yet. So you will probably see something in future versions, but not for now. Question about incident file download. Is this possible for email client purpose? For example, the authoritative admin can download the attachment if the user sends sensitive content. This is a good question. In the current implementation, this is not possible. It has to be a file stored on the computer, so it cannot be something that was sent in email. In the future, this may work. However, at the moment, you would have to solve this use case using the email server, which could be configured to quarantine attachments, and then you can check it out. However, Safetica cannot do this at the moment. In the future, probably yes, but with the current implementation, no. There is a question about dictionary imports. We implemented the dictionary with about 500 sensitive words at client, and they experienced extensive drag on workstation, and we eventually had to suspend the Safetica service. I think this is very unusual because we tested the dictionaries with, I think, 10,000 or 100,000 various keywords in our environment, and there was no such drag on workstations. So with this question, I would probably contact our support department, which can help you troubleshoot the problem, but it's definitely unusual and shouldn't happen. Obviously, with the dictionary import, we did optimizations of how our sensitive data detection works. So this may already be better in the new version, but I believe that the behavior was unusual in the first place already. Okay, then what is the maximum number of sensitive words we can have in a dictionary? So the total limit, I believe, is 100,000 words across all your dictionaries. So you can either use 2,000 dictionaries with a few words, or you can use one huge dictionary with 100,000 words, but the limit is counted altogether. You can read more about this or study more about this in the new e-learning, which will be prepared. And I believe we also have a knowledge-based article which describes this. So you can learn about these limitations there. So there's a question, does Safetica integrate successfully with logarithm SIEM solution? I believe yes. I would have to ask some of my colleagues to verify this, but we can integrate with SIEM solutions, and with the new improvements that we did in the version, the integration should be even more effortless. So I believe yes, but I can ask some of my colleagues to verify this. If you can contact our support department, I believe we can help you out with this specific question. Okay, then Okay, Linux support question, we already answered that. So there are some more questions. Let me just get through them. There are very many questions, and I would like to close up before 10. So let me just pick some of them which are repeated. Brian is asking about demonstration of the new alerts. I don't think we have time for that today. However, next week you will have the version and you can test it out yourselves. Again, I will be happy to hear more about the feedback. There is a question about Safetica MSP. Just to give you a short summary, yes, we are discussing how to best suit managed service partners which would like to use Safetica. The cloud support or cloud deployment is obviously a part of this. So we are working on this, but there is no specific new feature or new improvements regarding the MSP part in this new version. I believe in the next public version, we may have more announcements in this area, but currently we are in touch with a lot of MSPs. We are discussing their needs so that we can design what actually will be the first deliverables that we can do. So this is a very big topic we are dealing with, but it hasn't made it into the product yet. So in the future, you will hear more about the MSP support. Okay, there are some questions about data classification and some guidelines. If you have technical questions like that, feel free to contact our support department. They can help you out with that. Unfortunately, on this webinar, we don't really have time to discuss such detailed technical questions. Okay, so there's cloud hosting. Again, about cloud hosting, if you want to run a cloud virtual machine with Safetica server, I think the best thing to do is to contact our support department because they have information and experience with troubleshooting this, and they can guide you with setting the whole environment up. Okay, there's a question about Windows 7 support, which actually is ending in 2020. How long Safetica will support Windows 7? We haven't even started discussing end of life for support for Windows 7. So even based on the number of Windows 7 machines, I believe we will be supporting them longer time than Microsoft. So I wouldn't worry about Windows 7 at the moment. And as you may know, Windows XP support was ended only either at the beginning of this year or last year. So I expect that Windows 7 will be still supported for a few more years. Okay, there's a question about Chrome 77, 78. I'm not sure if I'm getting the question. If you've experienced any issues with Chrome 70, I think it's 78. We published a hotfix last week, which addressed the issue. So Chrome surprised us with a new update, which actually broke our compatibility a little bit, and you could see some error messages. That was already fixed. So if you check the updater on your environments, you will be able to update to the new version, which fixes the issue. I hope that was the question because I didn't quite get it. Okay, and we are reaching 10 o'clock. There was a question, why skip 9.2 and go straight to 9.3? This was our internal numbering. Version 9.2 ran in a few environments where we tested some of the functionality, but it wasn't publicly ready. So we just included all the features in version 9.3. So if you missed 9.2, you are not alone, and all the features will be included in the new version that we just went through. Okay, and there is a question about how about control device on Mac? Yes, that's one of the topics that we are planning for Mac. I cannot tell you if it will be in the next version or in one of the versions after that, but we are working on this too. So as I mentioned, this Mac version is the first one, but in the future we will expand it with new features, and of course device control will be probably one of the first updates that we'll be releasing, but I don't really have a timeline for this. So one of the future versions will definitely bring this. And Okay, and the other questions, I really skimmed through that, so if I missed your question, I'm really sorry. Again, I'll just switch the slides to the final one where you can see an email. So if you have any question which still remained unanswered, I'm sorry about that, but I would like to close up because we are already dragging a little bit later. So please address your questions to info@safetica.com. Thank you for your attendance. Also, if you have feedback on any of the new features or the roadmap topics, you can use this email to send us the feedback. We will be very happy to hear it. And again, you will receive the recording of this webinar, hopefully today and maybe even tomorrow from our own team. And the version will be available next week so that you can try it out yourselves. And I think that's it for me. So thank you very much for attending. Have a nice rest of the day and hopefully hear you again on the next webinar. Thank you and goodbye.